The family photo shattered against the hardwood floor just seconds before the truth shattered an entire marriage. The smiling faces trapped behind the cracked glass suddenly looked like strangers, because the woman standing in the doorway had just discovered that her husband and her lifelong best friend were expecting a baby together. In one devastating moment, 20 years of friendship, 12 years of marriage, and every promise she had ever believed in collapsed into silence. If you believe kindness, forgiveness, hope, and second chances still matter in this world, please take a moment to like this video, leave a comment, share this story with someone who needs encouragement, and subscribe to our channel to become part of our community. Meredith Lawson had always believed that loyalty was life's greatest gift. She grew up in a quiet coastal town where neighbors still baked pies for each other and children rode bicycles until sunset. She wasn't wealthy, glamorous, or famous, but she possessed something far more valuable. She trusted people with her whole heart. Her parents raised her to believe that honesty always won in the end, even when the journey became painful. When she met Garrett Vaughn during college, she thought she had found the person who valued those same principles. Garrett was ambitious without appearing selfish, charming without seeming arrogant, and attentive in ways that made Meredith feel truly seen. They built a comfortable life together filled with Sunday breakfasts, weekend road trips, volunteer events, and dreams of growing old side by side. Their home wasn't extravagant, but it overflowed with laughter and photographs that celebrated birthdays, anniversaries, and holidays spent surrounded by people they loved. One of those people was Celeste Harmon. Celeste had been Meredith's best friend since they were 11 years old. They survived awkward teenage years together, celebrated graduations, comforted each other through heartbreaks, and promised that no matter where life led them, their friendship would never change. Meredith had stood beside Celeste at difficult moments when her career collapsed after layoffs and when a painful engagement ended unexpectedly. Whenever Celeste needed help, Meredith opened her home without hesitation. After losing her apartment during financial struggles, Celeste moved into the guest room while searching for a new place. Garrett welcomed the arrangement warmly. Meredith believed it proved what a generous husband she had married. She often joked that the three of them had become an unusual little family. Looking back later, Meredith realized betrayal rarely arrives looking like betrayal. It arrives disguised as ordinary moments. There were quiet conversations that stopped when she entered the room. There were shared jokes she didn't understand. Garrett suddenly volunteered to help Celeste with errands Meredith never knew existed. Celeste became unusually protective of her phone. Garrett started working from home more often. Every strange detail seemed insignificant by itself. Meredith's trusting nature connected none of the dots because her heart refused to imagine the picture they formed. Then came the afternoon that changed everything. Meredith left work early because a client meeting had been cancelled. She decided to surprise Garrett and Celeste with lunch from their favorite neighborhood cafe. She smiled during the drive home, imagining everyone eating together on the sunny backyard patio. Instead, she walked into silence. The shopping bags slipped from her hands when she heard voices from the upstairs bedroom. She slowly climbed the staircase, confused rather than suspicious. As she reached the open doorway, time seemed to freeze. Garrett was holding Celeste while ultrasound photographs rested across the bed between them. Neither of them noticed Meredith immediately because they were celebrating. Then Garrett looked up. The color disappeared from his face. Celeste turned around with tears already filling her eyes. Nobody needed to explain anything. The ultrasound images explained everything. The child wasn't merely evidence of an affair. It represented months of carefully planned lies. Meredith didn't scream. She didn't throw objects. She didn't demand explanations. She simply looked at the two people she trusted most, quietly removed her wedding ring, placed it beside the ultrasound photographs, and walked out of the room without saying a single word. Sometimes silence carries more heartbreak than any argument ever could. The following weeks became the most painful season of Meredith's life. Friends called constantly after rumors spread through town. Some encouraged forgiveness. Others demanded revenge. A few insisted there must be some misunderstanding. There wasn't. Garrett admitted the affair had lasted nearly a year. Celeste confessed she had convinced herself they were in love. Both apologized repeatedly, but every apology centered more on relieving their own guilt than healing Meredith's broken heart. Meredith refused to let bitterness consume her. She cried often. She attended counseling. She took long walks through local parks during bright mornings, trying to remember who she had been before betrayal defined her days. She learned that healing wasn't about pretending pain didn't exist. Healing meant refusing to allow someone else's choices to determine the rest of her story. During counseling sessions, Meredith began organizing every financial document connected to the marriage. She had always handled budgeting because Garrett disliked paperwork. She discovered investments she had helped build, business records she had organized, and legal documents that Garrett barely remembered signing over the years. Garrett assumed Meredith would eventually become emotionally exhausted and agree to whatever divorce settlement he suggested. He underestimated the quiet strength of someone who had spent years responsibly managing every detail of their shared life. Meredith hired an experienced attorney recommended by a colleague. Together they reviewed every contract, mortgage payment, retirement contribution, tax return, and business agreement. Garrett had built a successful consulting company during their marriage, but Meredith had contributed countless unpaid hours organizing accounts, managing schedules, preparing reports, and supporting clients behind the scenes while maintaining her own career. The evidence spoke louder than emotions ever could. Court proceedings remained respectful because Meredith refused to turn them into public entertainment. She never insulted Garrett online. She never spread rumors about Celeste. She simply presented documented facts. When the settlement concluded, the outcome surprised nearly everyone. Meredith received ownership of their family home because of documented financial contributions and legal agreements Garrett had ignored for years. She retained a significant share of marital assets. Garrett lost control of several investments after failing to disclose important financial information properly. His consulting company faced expensive restructuring because Meredith's documentation revealed exactly how much unpaid labor had contributed to its success. People around town whispered that Meredith had left Garrett with almost nothing. The truth was simpler. She didn't take what belonged to him. She simply refused to surrender what rightfully belonged to her. Meanwhile, Garrett discovered that relationships born from deception rarely enjoy peaceful beginnings. Stress replaced excitement. Financial pressure increased. Public trust declined. Clients quietly moved their business elsewhere after learning about personal conduct that reflected poorly on professional judgment. Celeste also faced difficult consequences. She expected happiness to erase guilt, but guilt has remarkable endurance. Every milestone during her pregnancy reminded her that another woman's dreams had been destroyed to create this new chapter. Months passed. Spring transformed into summer. Meredith slowly rebuilt her life one ordinary day at a time. She converted one room of the house into an art studio, rediscovering a passion she had abandoned years earlier. She joined community volunteer projects helping families recovering from personal crises. She began mentoring young women entering the workforce, teaching them financial independence and self-confidence. For the first time in years, Meredith started making decisions based entirely on her own happiness rather than someone else's expectations. One bright afternoon during a charity fundraiser, she met Everett Cole, a widowed architect who spent weekends designing affordable housing projects for struggling families. Everett never rushed friendship into romance. Instead, he listened carefully, respected boundaries, and admired Meredith's resilience without treating her as someone who needed rescuing. Their relationship grew slowly through shared service projects, coffee after volunteer events, museum visits, and long conversations beneath warm afternoon sunshine. Everett never asked Meredith to forget her past. He simply reminded her that painful chapters didn't have to become the ending of her story. Across town, Garrett finally understood what he had truly lost. He had mistaken loyalty for something that would always remain available. He had confused forgiveness with permission. He had traded genuine love for temporary excitement. By the time regret fully reached his heart, Meredith had already built a peaceful future that no longer depended on him. One afternoon Garrett unexpectedly saw Meredith speaking to volunteers outside the community center. She smiled with a confidence he hadn't witnessed in years. Children laughed around her. Elderly neighbors thanked her for organizing food drives. Everett stood nearby carrying donation boxes while smiling proudly at her accomplishments. Garrett realized the strongest revenge had never been financial. It had been Meredith's refusal to become cruel. She never allowed betrayal to transform her into the kind of person who had betrayed her. That realization stayed with him long after he walked away. Several months later, Meredith received an unexpected handwritten letter from Celeste. The letter contained no excuses. It admitted selfishness, jealousy, insecurity, and years of secretly comparing her own life to Meredith's happiness. Celeste acknowledged that envy had slowly poisoned their friendship long before the affair ever began. She apologized not because she expected forgiveness but because honesty was finally the only thing left she could offer. Meredith read the letter carefully. She cried. Then she quietly placed it inside a drawer. She chose forgiveness, not because the betrayal had become smaller, but because carrying endless resentment had become too heavy. Forgiveness did not restore friendship. Forgiveness did not erase consequences. Forgiveness simply gave Meredith permission to move forward without dragging yesterday behind her forever. Years later, people who knew Meredith often described her as incredibly strong. She gently corrected them. Strength, she explained, wasn't something she discovered on the day her marriage ended. Strength was choosing kindness when bitterness seemed easier. Strength was protecting her dignity when revenge looked tempting. Strength was rebuilding instead of remaining broken. Most importantly, strength was believing that losing people who never truly valued her created room for people who genuinely would. Before we reach the end of this journey, leave a meaningful comment sharing what you believe is more important after betrayal, seeking revenge or finding peace. Your words may encourage someone silently carrying a broken heart today. As the warm afternoon sun filled the windows of the home Meredith had fought to keep, she looked around at a life that no longer depended on anyone else's honesty to remain beautiful. Her scars had become reminders of survival rather than symbols of defeat. The woman who once believed everything had been taken from her finally understood that the greatest treasures, self-respect, courage, compassion, and hope, could never be stolen by betrayal. Garrett lost a faithful wife. Celeste lost a lifelong friend. Meredith lost an illusion, but in doing so, she found herself. Sometimes walking away doesn't leave you with nothing. Sometimes walking away is the first step toward finally having everything that truly matters. If this story touched your heart, please like this video, leave a meaningful comment, share it with someone who needs hope today, and subscribe to our channel so you never miss another emotional journey. Thank you for being part of our community, where every story reminds us that even after life's deepest heartbreaks, hope can still write the most beautiful ending.